Okay. Last day, presumably, on these two pasukim and on the section. Mishlei 24, 21, and 22. Yira es Hashem b'ni v'melech im shonim al tisarav. Ki pitom yakum edam ufid shnehem mi yodea. Fear Hashem, my son, and the king. With shonim, which is a question, do not mingle or don't assimilate, for suddenly their disaster will come up, and their ruin or punishment of both of them. Who knows? Okay, our questions were: what is the scenario here? Why is the father warning the son about the king? Two, why are we talking about Yiras Hashem here? Why did we ask that? Was there more to that question? I'm not sure.
I was just asking, I'd asked that question so far as just if this isn't a good way about if being a shon is not a good thing and it's going to be harmful, then why bring Yiras Hashem? It's just a bad thing to do. Like, you're going to wind up getting destroyed. Why do you have to talk about Yiras Hashem?
Okay. Okay, so maybe I that for some reason that question didn't register when you said it, because what's your working understanding of Yiras Hashem? That is the premise of that question, I guess.
Okay, the understanding there of at the very least some sort of, how we're going to understand Hashem in this context, that fearing that is going to be important to actually say, instead of just saying don't mix with the shonim because you're going to get destroyed with them. But somehow, what is the added thing that Yiras Hashem is bringing in? Okay,
so I guess maybe the reason why again, I can't explain what happened yesterday, but the reason why I'm not why it's not registering as much now is this pays to review every once in a while. In my opinion, the best definition of Yiras Hashem in Mishlei is at the end, the last pasuk in chapter 15. Yiras Hashem musar chachma lifnei kavod anava. Fear of Hashem is the discipline of wisdom, and before kavod is anava. So to me, it is it's still, you could still ask the question of why is he framing it as Yiras Hashem? But the fact, in other words, Yiras Hashem is not contrary to consequences. Yiras Hashem in Mishlei is consequences.
Totally.
Yeah, right. Okay, fine. All right. I just want to make sure we're not.
It doesn't seem necessary to put it.
Okay, right. All right. 3. How can we even compare Yiras Hashem and Yiras Melech Basar V'Dam? And we said that you can't really talk about Malchus Shemayim and Malchus Basar V'Dam in the same sentence in Brachos, right? But to me, this is a major question that we need to answer. And I mentioned this is the litmus test of if you can't answer that question in a satisfactory way, then I feel like we're missing a big thing, because to me that's the biggest that sticks out like a sore thumb. Who are these shonim? Okay. 5. I guess let's ask 2 questions here. What is a shoneh in this context? And then who are these shonim, the ones that the kid is going to be mingling with, Okay, 5, what does it mean to be misarev im shonim? 6, who are the shenehem in Chav Beis? When it says their feed shenehem, right? The ruin or punishment of both of them. Is it Hashem and the king, meaning the punishment that's brought about by them? Is it the 2 shonim? Is it you and one of the shonim? It's kind of ambiguous. It depends also on whether this is the ruin or punishment of them or brought about by them. 7, what is the relationship between the 2 halves of Chaf Aleph? Right, fear Hashem and the king. That's one thing. Don't mix with shonim. You have to explain what those 2 are doing in the same piece of musar. 8, what aid is it talking about? Why is it yakum piton? Why is it described that way? 9, what is feed? And Tzidkon said it's the same as aid, but is it actually the same, or is it is there a slightly different thing? 10, what is the relationship between the argument in the Chaf Beis and the warning in Chaf Aleph? How do the consequences in the Chaf Beis result from the ignoring the warnings in Chaf Aleph? That's also a major question. 11, who's the audience specifically? Why does he need to be warned about these things? Okay, so I want to review the idea we said yesterday, and then I want to take, this could fall flat on its face, but I want to take a different kind of angle than we usually do and ask a question that we don't usually ask, okay, which could be asked about many pasukim, but I feel like it's important here. Okay, so don't be afraid. All right, so I'm telling myself that. Okay, 21, let's do the Metzudas David. Yira v'gomer. Ata b'ni, you my son, mitchila Yiras Hashem v'achach hasamelech. So that's the order, right? First fear Hashem, then fear the king. Al-olim yiras Hashem kodemus. Fear of Hashem always comes first. V'im shonim imanashim shemashanim pikudas hamelech v'yelchu b'shrirus libam hara imahim al tizarav. With men who deviate from or caused deviation within the pikudas melech. I said that I'm still uncomfortable with that word in the pasuk. Deviants, right? People who deviate and they follow the authority of their heart, of their evil heart. Don't mix with them. And then Yakum Edam Shivram al Ha'orim al Mitzvos Hashem B'Dvar HaMelech. That's the breaking that comes from violating the Mitzvos Hashem and the Dvar HaMelech. Ufi D'Shneim, and the ruin of both of them. Onesh Ha'over al Mitzvos Hashem, the punishment that comes from transgressing the Mitzvah of Hashem. V'Onesh Hamadiach Mipekudas HaMelech. Again, another weird word. Hamadiach Mipekudas HaMelech. Someone who, that's like Ir Hanidachas, right? Someone who leads someone astray from the king's command. Miyodea ma godol ha'onesh. Okay, who knows how big the onesh is? Okay, so my recollection of the idea was that, and tell me if I'm missing anything, is that that first of all, the device that the pasuk is using is it's taking a familiar type of fear, which is fear of a king back then, which we don't really have an equivalent of now. And it's saying that that should be your model for your relationship to the Devar Hashem. And just as you would not even dream of going against the king's word, even in the slightest way, because you fear his possibly immediate and great onesh. So too, you should have that relationship to Hashem, even though the onshim are not as visible. Okay, and we said that the reason why he's framing it as Pitom Yakum and Miodea is because those are the two rationalizations that we tend to use. We say, okay, there might be consequences, but like I can prepare for them and like brace myself for them or like whatever. And like I know what the punishment is going to be. And you might not say, I know exactly what the punishment is going to be, but you feel there's a certain feeling of like, well, it can't be more than I can handle. It can't be that bad. And in reality, just again, not that Hashem is like a capricious human tyrant, but in a capricious human tyrant framework, then the punishments could be like the worst that you can imagine, and they can happen immediately. So too with Hashem, you don't know the consequences of violating the word of Hashem. And like the example I gave yesterday of, Shlomo Melech says, okay, fine, if I violate these laws of the king, I'll become a little haughty maybe, and like I wrote Mishlei, I could deal with that, but what happened is it almost caused the destruction of all of Klal Yisrael, so like that was bad, and same thing with Shaul. I mean, Shaul is another example of that, right? Is he spared Agag and like the Amalekite, loot, and lost the Malchus, and brought about so much conflict and pain and suffering to himself and to the nation. I don't think if you had asked him, man on the street reporter, like, so Shaul, what are your thoughts right now as you're sparing Agag? Don't you know that Hashem is says that you should kill him? And what do you think Hashem's going to say? And he says that, but it's not even in his mind about that this could happen. Okay. So I think first of all, before we get to the scary question, yeah.
I think this could be talking to two different people.
Okay.
Just like as someone who understands the king and not Hashem, I think he's also the opposite person. So
interesting.
From and homo religiosus.
Yeah.
Takes Hashem seriously, but doesn't care about.
That's a good question. I mean, that's definitely a good point. Yeah. I question whether Shlomo means it that way, but we can definitely say it that way. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I feel like since he's talking to his son, then I feel like the odds that his son is like that are less likely, given all the other stuff he said to his son so far about like not mingling with Rishayim and like not hanging out with people who are like engaged in all this other stuff. But I think for us, we could take that. That's a very like Yeshayahu, Yirmiyahu type audience, right? Like people who are punctilious, is that the word, about like religious law. But when it comes to tax evasion or being out on the Chavero stuff, or like the way that they treat the widow and the orphan, and I know I'm still in the framework of halakha, but I'm saying like in the I hate the term ritualistic mitzvos, but like in the in the mishpatim, basically, like is, and in areas that that can extend into the malchus and into like the practical consequences, into government, into bosses at work. Like it doesn't extend there. Yeah, that's good. Good call. Yeah.
I've had a thought. I'm just struggling to put it into a full idea, but maybe I put it out there.
Yeah.
Okay, so I also do think as far as when we talk about before showing, so I think there does exist the types of people that do things differently than like the regular way that everybody goes about doing things. And they are successful in doing so. They have like their own unique way, and for whatever, maybe it's like their own psychological build, whatever it is, it works well for them, and it actually works well for them.
Yeah.
But if you were to try to join, either like dabble in it, or you're just not built the same way those people in their minds are built.
Yeah.
It's not going to work well for you.
Yeah. Interesting.
And especially like those people, like they need to be like really like full in on their unique way of doing things. I was just struggling to put into a full.
Okay, so I think, and tell me if this is what your intent was, that I think that is a good, fruitful approach to take, but I don't think that is the David's approach.
No.
Okay, fine. So I want to explore that. So let's just table that for 1 second. Okay. One question before we get to the scary question is, can we explain why he frames it as shonim instead of like sinners, like or offender, like some other more generic term than this weird one. Yeah.
Well, I thought I was saying this yesterday.
Yeah.
But, these guys aren't like active, like more. They're not rebelling.
Okay,
they're
right.
Like actively vested.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
They're not denying authority. They just, passively kind of don't care about.
Okay, right. I forgot that dimension of is. In fact, this is critical for my next question. Is that people who are like cutting corners or like keeping halacha in one context but not in the other, or like keeping the king's law in one place and not in the other. So I think that's just showing the extent of the warning, which is not only should you not be this way, obviously you shouldn't be this way, but even hanging out with people like that can influence you. Okay, now, yeah.
Is your scary question have to do with the like joke you slid yesterday?
What was the joke I slid yesterday?
You read whatever shorting or whatever translation was inconsistent.
Yeah.
Like we should all move away from each other.
Oh yeah, it does have to do with that. I wasn't thinking about that, but yeah. Okay, so here's my question, and this is a different kind of Mishlei question than I think I've ever asked in Mishlei. Okay, maybe this is the start of a new derech. Who knows? I don't know. Yeah. So, okay. So, I will not speak for everyone, but I think I can definitely speak for myself. Is I don't keep halacha perfectly. Okay, and I don't hang around people who keep halacha perfectly. Okay. This set of psukim, especially the second pasuk, is raising this like very fear-inducing consequence, right? Which is that if you deviate even a little bit, there could be swift and disastrous punishment. Not just if you deviate, if you hang out with people who that deviancy rubs off on you, So in psychology, then we call this type of thinking in other contexts catastrophizing, right? Catastrophizing is when you take, there are people, let's say, for example, who are, let's say, again, I'll take the version I'm familiar with is perfectionism, right? So there's this feeling that like, I have these high standards that I have to meet. And if I don't meet those standards, something horrible is going to happen, and usually that horrible outcome is not examined or weighed in terms of probability and stuff like that. And it causes you to make not just decisions, but like entire like values commitments and lifestyle commitments to avoid that catastrophe, or people do this in relationships, is that they will like, in the relationships, they'll have these feelings of like, well, I can't say or do certain things, or I must say or do certain things, because if not, then this whole thing is going to, like there's going to be this horrible thing, So I was thinking about this on the walk here this morning, and I feel like even though what Shlomo HaMelech is saying is true, I feel like a certain type of personality will take this and catastrophize, and that to me is unhealthy. Okay, for example, in the realm of religiosity, okay, especially in the realm of our messed up religiosity, where the line between halacha and between shur sedin and lifnim shur sedin is not clearly drawn, and we impose a lot of standards on ourselves that are lifnim shur sedin, that are really things that really are lifnim shur sedin. Sorry. Yeah, but we treat them as shur sedin, and vice versa, is that there are things that really are shur sedin, but we treat them as lifnim mishras hadin, and we therefore are not as careful about them. And in our psyche, it's all mixed up, and I think that there is an unhealthy mentality of going to either extreme. Okay, one extreme is kind of like what you were describing, Yaakov, but just is like this obsessive, neurotic relationship to halacha. Okay, that is psychologically damaging in many ways and also unsustainable. Okay, ultimately it's unsustainable. At least it's unsustainable without incurring severe damage. Or being overwhelmed by that standard and saying screw it and like not keeping halacha. Or I think what often happens to the people who are like in our circles in a religious community with keeping halacha is that if you do end up finding an area where you are not like at a level where you feel you should be in halacha, or you violate halacha, or you cut corners, or you hang out with people who are like that, then there is this, you compartmentalize in this unhealthy way where you you attempt to bury the hypocrisy in ways that are not like, I keep finding myself using the same words again, but like not sustainable, not healthy. Like, let's say, for example, like, let me think of an example that's not controversial. Yeah.
I mean, there are people who are like very medactic about like the Rambam's Hashem and feel, let's say,
Right.
but then we'll speak Lashon Hara.
Exactly, right. That's a good example, right? So like you end up being a shonim in the other translation of like inconsistent, So here's my question. And again, this is not the kind of question we usually ask. Okay, I don't know if this is a actual Mishlei application question or a mental health question or a like religious philosophy question or an existential question. How do we integrate the ideas of these pasukim into our lives, given these unhealthy tendencies that many of us are prone to? And if you're not one of the people, if you're not a person who's prone to these tendencies, then either like, ashrecha v'tov lach, or you have some real serious self-examination you need to do to realize that you are one of these people, so like, it's possible. I just think it's very, very hard to not feel this way in the society that we're in, because we're in such a neurotic society. And I don't, I'm going to stop the recording for this part. Yeah, Isaac.
Yeah. I think maybe the focus could be on the altis arav. That is not. It's not saying don't spend time with anyone who ever does this.
Okay, that's good.
It's don't spend time with people who are shonim, meaning where it's like a defining characteristic, meaning that this is something that they're okay with,
Right. Okay.
Actively doing, like,
Yeah.
Someone who's who wouldn't, let's say, break Shabbos in front of their parents, but is fine breaking Shabbos in front of you. Like,
right.
It's saying like to distance yourself from people who are doing that type of thing. Like,
okay, that's a really good answer. So let me just talk that through a little bit. And you have a different answer you want to add to that?
Question.
Okay, so I'm going to state my understanding first. So that's a good point. So it's not, first of all, it's not saying don't be inconsistent. That is impossible as a human to not be inconsistent, right? I mean, again, we say vidui on Yom Kippurim a lot. There are chatanim that we do b'shogeg, b'mezid, and b'mered, b'fasha, right? And everybody says those, so everyone is subject to those. So it's not saying don't be inconsistent, but there is a difference between being with people who this is an occasional thing that's not part of their essence, and there's and between being with people who like are, it's funny to say this, openly inconsistent, but like you're saying, like, they're totally okay with like this double standard. And I think one of the ideas that brings out is, or the reason why that's a pitfall, in my opinion, is in reality, there's only one reality. Okay. Reality is not divisible into two. Okay. And when you're hanging out with people like that, it fosters a compartmentalized view of reality, like that the Dvar Hashem is real here, but not over here. And that's a dangerous thing. Like that can actually erode your practice in very subtle ways, because then you're going to feel, for example, let's say with the Shabbos example, you're going to feel that Shabbos isn't really real, that like Shabbos is real when I'm at home, but it's not real when I'm with my friends, or like Lashon Hara is a huge isser and is problematic when I'm in front of my Rebbeim, but like not when I'm hanging out, so like it reinforces. So if you're with people who are not shonim and who slip up in halacha, so there is going to be a baseline value, shared value that, okay, this is wrong and there are consequences here. And like, we want to distance ourselves from that. But if you're with shonim who embrace like these isurim or these bad values, and you're constantly exposing yourself to people who are like living in two worlds, like it's going to fragment your world. It's going to fragment your reality. Okay. Yeah. Question.
It was answered.
Oh, okay. Could I hear what it was anyway? In case it was,
I think misunderstood something.
Oh, okay. All right. That's a good answer, Isaac. I like that. Yeah, David.
And also say I'm taking this as part of what Isaac was saying also.
Yeah.
That it's not going to be clear, that at a certain point it probably won't be clear to you when they are operating in the okay realm, when they're operating in the not so okay realm.
Yeah.
Like within them, aside from just like those types of people and whatever their personalities will rub off on you and their approaches to things will rub off on you. Even like in the moments that you're with them, you won't know, like they'll probably start becoming unclear within themselves whether they're like speaking Lashon Hara or not. And then to you, it's not going, like they're going to wind up getting you involved in that thing you didn't want to be getting involved in. You didn't even realize it was happening.
Right. Yeah. So you're talking in the practicality of it, because they sanction these behaviors.
Even if like originally, like I wouldn't speak in front of Rabbi Shmuel stuff. Right. But then they kind of like start blurring the lines of like, well, was this actually such a bad thing because they do it sometimes, and then they'll wind up, and maybe even to whoever they're speaking to, it also won't be so clear. Correct. Yeah, that's good. I mean, I know I've quoted this a lot, but I'm going to quote it again because it's a good idea. In the first parak of Tehillim, in the first pasuk, so happy / praiseworthy is the person who doesn't follow the counsel of the wicked, who doesn't stand on the path of sinners, and doesn't sit in the session of scorners, of scoffers, but only the Torah of Hashem is his desire, and his Torah he thinks day and night. So there's machlokas about what the order of these things is, and one of the Mefarshim we did, I want to say it's the Meiri, says that Rishaim here does not mean evildoers. It means people who are like clamor. Actually, maybe I'm mixing up two things. Whatever. It doesn't even matter here. There's one interpretation that it goes in increasing severity. Okay, meaning that Rishaim in this context are the least bad, Chataim are worse, and Leitim are worse. And the I don't know if he was quoting Chazal or if the Mefarish himself was saying this. He says, well, if you don't walk with them, how are you ever going to stand? If you don't stand with them, how are you ever going to sit? So the way we explained it is that what happens is you label yourself differently than these people. You say, I am not a Russia. That guy's a Russia. But what happens is if you walk with them, you start identifying with them, and then that identification blurs the line and then causes you to then behave like them, because now you, in order to deal with that cognitive dissonance, you end up like acting like them. But then you say, well, I might be, and you don't call yourself a Russia at that point, I might be one of these guys, but I'm not one of those guys. But by that time, you never would have been near those guys if you hadn't gotten to the group of the Rishaim. But now that you're in the group of the Rishaim, you start standing around with the Chatayim, and then you start identifying with them, so it being with these people dissolves the boundaries because of identification. Yeah. Okay. I have a different answer. Anyone else have an answer to the question about how you can healthily integrate this without the unhealthy types of catastrophizing? Yeah.
Well, I have a question of that.
Yeah.
To what extent is it true for someone who himself is a shonen?
Is a shonen, you said.
Yeah, with Var Hashem.
Right.
Like, let's say you're not good with like creation or something.
Right.
Is it the case that there's going to be an Adam that comes suddenly to you?
It's a good question. I was going to say, like, what you need to do if you're one of the shonen, you need to get really good at masking it and then hang out with people who are non-shonen, right? Because if they know this idea, then they're going to avoid you. So you have to So yeah, the question is there a like, let's say in the areas where it seems like there's not a consequence, let's say like Zman Kriyashma or something like that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, just like if you're asking like a mental health type of question,
yeah,
the way I'm just thinking about it is to not fault myself for being human.
Right.
Like part of the human condition is that, as you said, that we're inconsistent, and so I can use it as like a good data point or something. There's some reason why I'm not good with Kriyat Shema, whatever it would be, but to not like get mad at myself for that. Like it's gonna come up in some places, and like good to know where the places are, and I can learn from there.
Okay, that's definitely good.
Initial question now, like, would the example fall into the scope of this idea?
You're saying if you are like, I'm not sure what your question. Are you saying like, does a particular thing make you one of the shonim, or are you saying? Just ask a question.
Like how bad of a shonen does it have to be for the consequence of a chaf base?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Well, that's the thing about chaf base, right? Is that theoretically, chaf base can happen even if you're not a shona as a personality, right? Like, I don't think that Shaul HaMelech or Shlomo HaMelech were shonen by personality, but any because really here's the thing: chaf beis is a consequence of violating the Devar Hashem, not a consequence of being a shonen. The warning about not mingling with shonim is that by mingling with them, you're making yourself more prone to these consistent violations of Devar Hashem, which will make you a subject to chaf beis. But chaf beis is a quality of violating Devar Hashem per se, and that can happen even in one instance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's why my question extends beyond this particular pasuk. This question really is about keeping halacha in general, and our relationship with halacha. So I'm going to give an answer that is so first of all, I like your answer, and that's the idea. There are many ideas in Judaism about that, like Adam Mimacham Kaparaso Nivra. The man was created from the place of his kapara. That like tshuva is a part, or I think it's one of the Shuva is one of the things that was created before the world, right? One of the 7 things, and that means that it's part of the fabric of human existence that you're going to do. You're going to sin, and you're going to have to do tshuva. And again, that should not be a matir, but it should be a reminder that you are a human being in development for the course of your life, and part of development is the ups and downs and the fluctuations. I think I most recently talked about that in my shiur on Rosh Hashanah on Rabbi Kiva's view of how God judges the world, or something. Or Rabbi Kiva's strategy for a good judgment on Rosh Hashanah. That's worth listening to before Rosh Hashanah. Okay, but I have a different answer, and this is kind of based on a little bit on IFS thinking, but I need to review IFS. I realized it's been like 2 years since I've last read a book on IFS, and I got to like go back and reread it again. So I think the key is to recognize that there are different parts of you, okay, and that there is a part of you that genuinely recognizes the truth and value of the Devar Hashem and does not want to violate that, and then there are other parts of you that don't recognize it and that have a value system and that you want to be the king. I mean, there's a reason why in Meiri's derech nistar, quoting from Koheles, the Yetzer Hara is the evil old king. It wants to be a king, and it is the king. It's the de facto king of your body. That's his explanation, because it gets a 13-year head start over the Yetzer Tov, So like, there are these two parts of you, and I think the mistake is to try to suppress either of the parts. Like when you are in the halacha observance mode, you kind of downplay or ignore or pretend that the other part doesn't exist, and then when you're in the grips of chait or in the aftermath of the chait, it's very easy to go to one of the two extremes. You either like compartmentalize and fragment and like get into almost like an alter ego type state. Like this is like, like this is me when I'm in my violating halacha mode or whatever, and like forget the other part, or you do the chait and then immediately self-castigate and be like, oh, like that's bad, like that, get rid of that part, I think the first step, and I don't know what this looks like in practice. I think this is something I myself am struggling with, is being able to like live with all of your parts. And I say live with because like, I think accepting them and thanking them is a much higher level, but like just being able to sit with them and recognize that these are all parts of me. And I think Mishlei can help with that, because like, I think there is a tendency to ignore the Mishlei idea that you are to ignore the Mishlei pasuk that you are about to or have just violated, and same thing with the Devar Hashem. And I think that being able to like, I think that again, that's just going to contribute to the compartmentalizing, the fragmentization. I think being able to keep these ideas in mind and realize that like, yeah, this is the truth, like, and I'm not living up to that. And I don't think that that's good, that itself is keeping you from being one of the shonim the way that Isaac was defining it. Like the shonim don't do that. I mean, at least maybe inside they do, but like the way that they're living, they are openly having a double standard of living, and like I think it is a huge step to be able to be in conflict about these things, and to like, when I say be in conflict, I don't mean the type of conflict that flares up and then you push it away. I mean to be able to sit in conflict with these things and realize that like I have a yitzhar tov and I have a yitzhar hara, and like they are a part of me. Like I think just that step, again, I don't know what the path to like, I don't even want to say cultivating that. Like I don't know what the path to like becoming more aware of that is like, but I feel like that's an important step in this battle. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, ציון. Okay, let's do the Meiri. Okay, the Rabbeinu Yonah doesn't have an actual commentary. There's a footnote that quotes it, which is noteworthy, but I think I would rather use time for the Meiri. Yeah.
Did you want to take up the other thing I mentioned?
Oh yes, sorry. Yes. What was the other thing? Just remind me.
I was saying that they're showing more people who they have their own unique way of doing things.
Right.
They're very good at it. They're masters at it.
Right. Yeah.
If you were to dabble or to not go all in, then it's going to wind up being bad for you.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So, right. So shonim there we're defining as, I feel like there's a good English word for that. What do you call people who are like, Maverick is good. What do you say?
I think I said trailblazer.
Oh yeah, I think which one captures more what you meant? Because when you were talking, I was thinking like trailblazers. Like I'm thinking of like the Apple commercial. Like here's to the geniuses, to the like the creative.
Oh, I mean, I wasn't thinking necessarily. I mean, I think a trailblazer also means that there's going to be like a trail after them. I mean, I wasn't thinking of people that necessarily lead a trail. Like it could have just also been like someone who it's their own thing. There's never going to be a person following after them.
Right.
They're one person. Like they're very well fit to do this. Pretty good.
Right. Yeah. So I know I say this a lot. And then you're saying mingling with them means trying to emulate them, not hanging out with them, but trying to emulate them, right?
Trying to do something of that sort.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Give me 1 second.
Are you saying that's also what Club Face is talking about with the?
So that's where I was struggling because I do think, I mean, what I'm saying, I think that it does work well for these people. So as far as a dumb being something bad happening to them, like they're good at what they're doing and they're able to do it. So.
Wait, so okay, so but you're saying that the 8 is going to happen to you if you try to do what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
But then a dumb is not like a decha, and then also p shnei hem with the shnei hem be. That's how I was struggling.
Right. So I'm going to weigh in on the idea, not on the parish though.
Okay.
I'm not sure if the parish is going to play out, but my mind is on the idea. Is that I think that and again, I'm not quoting sources for this. Like this is just my understanding of how human beings work. Is that I think those people are the people who were actually true to themselves, and also placed a premium on mastering their craft. And I think that the temptation is to try to either emulate them or to shortcut the path that they took, like, and I know this I've quoted many times is Bruce Lee's learn the rules, master the rules, dissolve the rules, or I've given examples. I'm pretty confident if you look at all the true masters of their craft, you'll see that they went through the stage of, they had a unique voice, but they went through the stages of like learning the craft. And my favorite example, which no one can relate to here probably, is like, I really dislike early Beethoven. Okay. Early Beethoven was a classical composer. Beethoven, the one that we know and love, and by we, I mean I, is, he essentially was the forerunner of was the pioneer of a movement called Romanticism, which is not classical music. So when you listen to his early stuff, he's like a Mozart imitator, and you can hear glimmers of his own personality, but like he hasn't become Beethoven yet. But he became Beethoven by like emulating Mozart and like finding his path, and then he eventually was able to listen to his own voice and become his own path. So I think like there's a temptation to want to to do your own thing, and I think that that's a good motivation because we are unique as individuals and but you have to do it in a developmentally appropriate way. And the way to do that is to buckle down and like learn from the masters, not trying to emulate like the out of the box type, thinking of them, and then cultivate your own unique derech, like in due time. I mean, that's my my advice. Yeah. I have to think more about how whether it applies to the
puzzle. A
puzzle.
little bit different than what I was thinking.
Okay. Okay. So what's the difference?
The way I've been thinking about it was just aside from like the shortcutting to get to like still follow the master.
Yeah.
I was just saying that certain people, I think, have their own like dispositions that enable them to be shonim. And they were very, very strong, and they were masters at their one particular unique thing that they were very good at.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be able to either shortcut your way to get to that because you're never going to get there.
Yeah.
Or just altogether like trying
to
do something with them. And like, okay, so it'll be like part of like whatever unique thing this person does, and you can't do it part way. Like you got to be them fully doing it to be successful within it.
Okay, yeah. So I think that's why I think I fundamentally disagree with that premise, and I can't prove it. I think everyone is actually unique and has their own, and it can be one of those people.
Okay, so I'll clarify then what I'm saying, because I do think that people have that, but to try to follow like that person's unique type of thing. Maybe this isn't all that different than what you have been saying, but to like try to follow that exact unique thing that person was able to do. Yeah. And to only dabble in it a little bit. Right.
Yeah. I agree with that message as well. Yeah. I'm not, I have to think more about whether we are saying different things or not. Okay. Yeah. I'm not sure. Okay. Meiri says, He'ara Toris v'hamonius. This is a Torah insight and a mundane, everyday insight. I never know how to vocalize that. Liro as Hashem, Levilti Avor Achas Mikol Mitzosav. To fear Hashem and to not transgress any of his mitzvos. Same thing with the king. The Shonim inyan chiluf v'shinoi is a change. Shonim comes from reversals and changing. Kumo v'dah same shonos. Their laws are different, like in Esther. Klomar lo tisarv im hamamrim divrehem umitzvosam. So this is like rebels, people who deviate. O tefarish as hamashunim b'masem, or people who are different in their actions. So either they changed, like people who try to change things, or who changed from things, or people who are different. I'm not sure what he means by that. The retribution will come swiftly, without warning, to wipe out those who are who violate the word of these of Hashem and the King instantaneously. Ufid who gamkin in an 8. Umiodea, and who knows who chizuk bo'u pitom. It's a strengthening of the fact that it could come quickly. Okay, so he's not learning like Metzudas David that it's the magnitude. He's saying it's just a repetition to strengthen the immediacy. Okay, this is what I want to get to. I haven't read this yet. Derech nistar. Oh, that's different. Okay, I was all prepared for him to say that the melech here is the Yetzer Hara, and I was going to be intrigued by how he can say fear Hashem and the Yetzer Hara and put that in one thing, but he's not saying melech is that there. He's saying the chacham is the melech. Bi malachim yimlochu v'rosnim yechokuku tzedek. Bi sarim yasoru unedivim kol shoftei arts. That's in Mishlei 8, where it's personifying chachma, and chachma says, through me kings reign and lawmakers engrave righteousness. Through me officers officiate, and the nobles and all the judges of the earth. Okay. Uvilashon Talmud, Shalama Alaihu Malchi. I don't know why he's quoting that. Vamruzal es Hashem Elokacha Tira. It says to fear Hashem, L'rabos Talmid Chachamim, and the reboy is that includes Talmid Chachamim. Avchin Mora Rabcha Kamor Shemaim. So too the fear or the awe of your Rebbe should be like the fear of heaven. Ki ha'over al mitzvos Rabo, ilu over al mitzvos Shemaim. One who violates the mitzvos of his Rav, it's like he violates the mitzvos of Shemaim. I have no idea where he's going right now, by the way. Ki chol torcho alav l'hodio yiras Shemaim v'lelechas b'darchei hakelis barach. All your Rav's toil is to get you to teach you yiras Hashem and to follow in the ways of God. V'shonim inyan shnius. Veromas alpinos hayichud. Whoa. Okay. Shonim is alluding to Zoroastrianism, to dualism, right? To belief in Shtei Rishuyos. And it is alluding to the foundational beliefs of Yichud Hashem. Ukvar yadata min ha'munos bali hashnius. Okay, you know the beliefs of the dualists. Where is he going with this? He's warning you not to mingle with them. You should believe in God's absolute oneness without any degree of a plurality. That's not really the best quote to have. Okay. What was that? Well, I mean, yesh echad ve'ein sheni. I mean, that's limiting God's oneness to the fact that there is only one God and not multiple gods. But he's saying below shum tzad riboy, without any aspect of multiplicity, which I think that's not a good quote for that. But whatever. I would say echad ve'ein yachid ki yehudo, if you're going to quote like from a phrase like that. I don't know. It says he's quoting from Al Pi Koheles Dalet Ches, which is not shot of the pasuk. I think he's just borrowing the phrase.
Talking about how you shouldn't be one. So
that's funny. Yeah. Okay. It's promising the. Oh, this is about your Krishna example.
really?
No, I'm saying like about Yichud Hashem. But he's promising vengeance about this to someone who stumbles in this. Pitom yakum edam. O yihya inyan pitom yakum edam. So either it's warning of an immediate punishment, or it's saying that your misfortune can come immediately, meaning that this emunah can enter your heart instantly. Because the people who believe in this are good at drawing in hearts. Like it says, the misfortune of both of them, who knows? Ramaz al mute hamasigim zeh mitat hakira. This is alluding to the few people who understand this by way of philosophy. Wow, this is a totally different direction than I would have expected. Like it says, who knows the spirit of man that goes up? So that's talking about people who actually understand the nature of the soul in Koheles. That's not that person.
Isn't that later on in Koheles?
That's in 3, I thought.
Oh, maybe.
Let's check. 3. What was it? 3:21. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So I think my understanding of that is we know that Olam Haba exists, but how many people actually understand what the soul is and how it gets there? Okay, so that's that. Okay, so I'm curious about this one. So I know we only have 1 minute. So I do think this is actually related to what I was saying before. Okay, we don't really have dualists who go around like Zoroastrians. And I think the closest thing, what was it? Yeah, that's true. I think though that that dualism still is a belief that we're prone to. That's why it's so appealing. In Christianity, it manifests as God and Satan. And I think in the human psyche, it manifests as compartmentalizing reality. That there's a realm that God is melech over, and then there's a realm that is going based on its own principles, which is the root of all of Avodah Zarah, and I think this is warning us about just how easy it is to give into emotions that cater to that. Like segulas are an example of that. Is that like I always remember the story that that Rebbe said that he was in New Hampshire and he saw this woman who had this like red string that she was wearing, and somehow they got into a discussion about it, and she said how like this protects her from like from bad stuff, and then Rebbe says something like, I thought Hashem was supposed to do that, and she said, yeah, but this helps, like there's like shtei rishuyos, like there's 2 realms, or like the people who will use rational thinking in all the areas of life, but then they'll have their magical charm that so I'm just kind of astonished that Meiri took this route. And I also don't understand what the relationship between 21 and 22 is. Fear Hashem and the king being the Chacham or Chachma, and your Rav. This is historically, but something to think about. Okay, but I think we got good ideas from this pasuk though, these pasukim. And again, I think, Yaakov asked me before shiur, like a lot of these pasukim have sounded the same, in terms of warning his son not to be in these groups. To me, the ideas have been different. And to me, this is like the idea we had today is like a starkly different idea than the last idea. For example, the last idea was about don't mix with Rishayim, because the nature of Rishus is that it is limited in its fuel, and they're gonna appear very successful, but their rishus is gonna be self-destructive, like a completely different idea than this, even though in practice he is warning you to not hang out with certain people. And I remember the ideas before that, but yeah. Okay, very good. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
All right.